We do touch on some heavy topics, and you can always check the description for more details on this episode. The Turtz podcast and content in this episode is presented solely for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. Neither I nor my guests are healthcare or mental health care providers, and we are not licensed or authorized to provide professional medical advice. For more information, please see our policy at TURTZED.com. Today we're going to discuss evolution of identity, breaking the mold, stereotypes, and life after sports. Jake, welcome to TURTZED.
Thank you for having me.
I am excited to dive in today and really explore something that you've been doing on social media through TikTok and sharing your life and discovering your identity.
Let's do it.
So with starting today, I'd love to begin where you felt like you really found your first identity.
I think my first identity that I found was at a young age when I started baking. My dad was a realtor in California. And then whenever we moved to Texas, he didn't get his real estate license. And he started a bakery for my mom called Me's, because her initials are M-E. Mm-hmm. And she's gluten-free, so he wanted to start it. So I kind of grew up around the baking in the kitchen all the time and started doing that. And I really found a passion for it because it was creative. It was fun. It was always something new to try. And I love that. And I think that was really my first dive at my kind of first passion.
When you look at your identity at that age and exploring baking, you also had an identity of playing football and played in high school and college. Where did that converge for you? Were they at the same time? Do you take a break from baking? Like, what did that look like as you were growing up in high school?
Yeah. When I started playing football, I was still baking back in Texas. I started playing in 5th grade, and that was kind of right around whenever I started taking baking seriously too. And then I worked at 2 bakeries throughout high school, and I would always kind of hide it, like wouldn't really talk about it that much at the time, but I loved doing it. And it was kind of like my safe space, my escape. And so I worked at the first bakery, and then I worked at the second one before moving away for football. And then I kind of stopped baking a little bit my senior year of high school when I was down in Florida.
When did you realize that that was a true passion of yours?
I think the funny thing about football, and I still ask myself this today, is if it was my passion or other people's passion for me. And I think I found out that it was something that I was going to stick with right around 8th grade, I would say. I was playing for my best friend's dad. He was a coach of our local team. And every week he would bring in somebody new to kind of keep us engaged. You know, we're young, our attention span was low, and bring in like a punter from an NFL team or, you know, and one week he brought in this long snapping coach, John Finch, who became my long snapping coach all the way through. I went to college, and I was the center at the time. So I started taking lessons from him and taking it seriously, going to camps all around the country. And it was kind of like, okay, this is going to be my ticket to college, because that's what I've been, you know, kind of told I was going to do. And that's how I was going to go to school. So
it's interesting that something that you were good at, maybe not passionate about or as passionate about as you are other things, was something that allowed you to look at colleges, look at different paths in your life, and also having baking, that maybe that wasn't necessarily something that you saw as a full-time career, but something that you were extremely passionate about and love to this day. You mentioned that you weren't sure if it was your passion or people's passion for you. When you look at that period of time, did that matter, or had you already made up your mind that this was just something that you were going to do because you're good at?
It didn't really matter to me throughout high school. It was really whenever I got to college that I kind of sat back and realized, like, what am I doing this for? And I remember texting my parents. I was like, I made it to college. Are you guys happy now? Like, can I do what I actually love? And they were like, you know, it got you to where you want to be. And I was like, is it where I want to be or where you wanted me to be? And I think there was a little bit of resentment in that sense towards my family for a good few years that, you know, through therapy and everything, I've worked to overcome. And I have a great relationship with my parents now. But, you know, at the time, it's kind of a confusing place to be of, you're doing this thing, you're good at it. And I would say I was much better in high school than I was. Did not have a great season my freshman year of college. And I think it's hard to do something to the best of your ability whenever you don't want to, you know, it's not what you want. And I think that goes to the quote that I always think about of, if you do what you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life. And I would walk into the facility, kids would walk in, they'd be so happy. It'd look like they're just having so much fun. And I'd be over there feeling like I'm going to work at 18 years old every single day, doing something that I did not like to do.
It's an interesting position to be in, because on one token, paving the way for college and being able to get something great out of playing football is wonderful.
Yeah.
And also talking about the resentment you felt towards your family and working through that in therapy. If you don't mind sharing a little bit more just about how you worked through it and how you look at that time period now.
Yeah, I think I try not to regret anything I do in life, because I think at the end of the day, it gets you to where you are now. And football, I'm always going to be grateful for it. It got me to where I am. And it was kind of like the vehicle getting me to my destination, which I still don't know what that is, but
Still exploring,
still figuring out. But it kind of got me to where I'm at right now. And I'm very happy. And I think seeing that and looking back and understanding that, you know, while I wasn't enjoying it in the moment, I understand. And this is kind of what I dove into in therapy is, you know, why was I doing it? And I look at my parents who wanted and still want nothing but the best for me. And if you're a parent looking at a kid who has a talent, I'd imagine you would, you know, probably do the same of, you know, oftentimes they see things from a different light. And so I think just trusting, looking back, that they were always having my best interest and always looking out for me, kind of made it easier to discard that resentment and get over it.
I think the forgiveness is really important with anything. We're all human and we all make mistakes. And as a parent, to your point, you want what's best for your child. And I think it can be hard to look at an opportunity and understand just because your child is good at something doesn't necessarily mean that they like it.
Yeah.
And it's really important that you got to the point where you could understand it from someone's perspective.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that you don't wish that things were different.
Yep.
But that, to me, is how we let go of things, how we get to the point where we can move forward without harboring resentment for the past. You, through that process, have worked through and been able to communicate those things. Was there something holding you back from communicating that in high school when you started looking at colleges, or even just on your way to college, that prevented you from voicing that opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would always voice it to my parents, even when I was still closeted throughout high school, throughout college, or whenever I was playing in college. And I was out to my parents, so they always knew, but it's hard to explain kind of how you walk in somewhere every day and feel like you have to be different than who you truly are. And it's not something that I expect them to understand, because if you don't go through it, you don't understand it. And you never, you know, you can try and resonate with it and kind of relate to it, but it's hard to unless you've actually done it. And no matter how much I explained to it, I just felt like there was kind of a gap of it'll never be heard or seen. So it is what it is. And I kind of reached that point with them whenever I was playing.
When you came out to your parents and were still keeping that aspect of your life separate from football, was coming out something that you thought that you could do while playing football? Or did you have a feeling about what your coming out process would look like?
Yeah. I always wanted to do it when I was playing football. But unfortunately, because of a medical reason, I ended up medically retiring earlier than I expected to keep playing. And so in the back of my mind, I was always planning like, okay, like maybe my junior year I'll do it, or my senior year I'll do it. And kind of, I wanted to do it while I was still playing, because I think it's such an unusual thing. But at the end of the day, I felt just so trapped and so weighed down in the moment that at that time, whenever I was actually playing, I just wasn't able to get the courage to do it, I would say. And I think that is one of the things that I would look back and regret and wish that I did whenever I was playing, because I think it would have helped a lot of people. It would have hurt me a little bit, but helped a lot.
I think that's such a noble way to look at it, where you are willing to have that difficult conversation. And obviously having a medical injury is not something that you can control. And just because you weren't ready, you weren't graduating. So it didn't mean that you weren't going to do it. And I think as you're talking about it, just having that awareness of I know this is going to be difficult, but it can help other people is so powerful. And I think in a way, for me, part of the reason why I wanted to have the conversation today was a post that you made for National Coming Out Day, I think this year. And it was just a picture of you. And it was talking about the reasons that you were coming out and wanted to speak up. And as you swiped over, it was because he couldn't. And it was a picture of you in a football full uniform. And although you weren't necessarily playing in the moment that you posted that picture, I do think there is so much power in sharing that story and sharing it in that way where you can see the juxtaposition of these are the same people and why shouldn't I be able to tell that singular story?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people forget that a person before they come out is the same person as after they come out. It's the same person. And if you like them any less or see them any differently, it says more about you than it does them. And I think understanding that kind of gave me the peace of mind to finally do it whenever I did it.
And in a lot of ways, there's even more of that person because when you come out, you're not hiding anything more. You're actually, for the people that love you, they're getting more in the relationship because now they have that extra piece of the puzzle that they didn't have before.
Exactly. I think a lot of people question like, okay, something's off before you come out and they kind of are trying to put their finger on it. And then finally, I think it answers a lot of people's questions too. But I think the funniest comments for me to read are the ones that are saying like, why do you act more gay now? I'm like, because I'm not hiding who I am. Like I'm being myself. What do you mean? It's exactly how I would act if I could have.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that that is such a great point to pivot to because as you mentioned, you had a medical injury that prevented you from continuing playing football. And I think a lot of people, regardless of coming out or not, struggle with the idea of what comes after sports. And for some people, it's after high school. For some people, it's after college. For some people, it's after playing professionally at different levels. And when your whole identity from 5th grade is really wrapped up in a skill that you have, but you don't necessarily pursue it for one reason or another, there's a whole new world that you have to look to explore. What was that like for you when you realized that you weren't going to be playing football anymore and you had to almost rediscover yourself?
Yeah. Figuring out who I was after football was probably one of the hardest things, and I'm still doing it to this day, and I think I'll continue to do it because I think we evolve as we grow and everything. But my head coach, I went in to him whenever I kind of decided to do the medical retirement, and he said to me, he said, "What are you passionate about?" And I said, "Fashion, lifestyle, and traveling." And he said, "Then do it and do it the best you can." And I think that was the most powerful thing in that moment that I could have heard from a Division I well-known college coach that you wouldn't expect, who really kind of showed me that just because this chapter's ending doesn't mean that your life is ending. And whether I enjoyed football or not, it was still, when somebody would say, "What do you do?" I would say, "Oh, I play football in college," or "I play football in high school." And then afterwards I would get asked the question. I would just kind of sit there for a few seconds and wonder like, what do I do? And getting to a point where you know what to say is probably the hardest thing.
Yeah. To me, it really struck a chord hearing your coach say that. Teared up a little bit because to him in that moment, you were still the player on his team. And he was saying, no matter what you do, I have these unbelievably high expectations of you and you better do it to the best of your ability, no matter what it is. And that level of acceptance is so powerful and also, I don't want to say unexpected because I don't think that that's the right word, but it's almost what we wish we could hear all the time, right? If you could have heard that the day you started football in college, right? Knowing that he had that belief in you that nothing else mattered except for when you were on the football field, you were playing to the best of your ability. When you were off the football field, you were that same person. And that has more to do with character than it does football, fashion, travel, lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a big part of the program I was at, Rutgers, is, it's all about family. And I think that really showed me that no matter if I'm playing for him or not, once you're part of a family, you're always part of it. And I think that stuck with me. And that's kind of what I've been extremely grateful for.
I mean, that right there is a lesson in itself. I I guess as you keep that in your mind with everything that you're trying, what did that look like to start exploring your identity and exploring fashion and TikTok and baking and all of these things that you may not have been exploring before?
Yeah. It's been chaotic for sure. I think a lot of people kind of like that chaos and you never know what I'm going to do. I read a comment a few days ago and it was, is there anything he won't try? And I'm like, honestly, no, because life is short. I'm going to try it all except for anything surfing. I'm not going in the ocean, not with a shark, but everything else I'm like, I'll try it because why not? And I'll figure out what sticks and go with that.
As you've explored your identity and shared so many of these things that have people saying, what won't you explore? Yeah. What has sharing it through social media done for that process?
I think sharing it through social media has definitely helped it and elevated it in a way, but also allowed me to try more things. I think people are constantly giving me ideas of things to try, and they're things that I wouldn't even think of, but I want to do now that I do think about them, or things that, you know, you see things on social media and you think, oh, it's not possible to go and try that. And it's like, no, it is. And I think that's the power of social media today too, is that it allows us to try so many things and show other people that you don't have to stick to one thing. You can do everything you think of and, you know, share it with the world.
I also think that ownership of who you are really comes through on social media, and sometimes it is chaotic. And I also think that creates a reality for people that they really get to know you. Yeah. And for me, at least, I can sit on a couch, talk to a person, have cameras, other people in the room, and it doesn't bother me. Yeah. I think when you sit facing a camera and have to talk free flowing thought, there's no one else there, and you're just talking to camera, you can't hide behind someone else's story, right? I'm sharing my experience posting on social media through you, right? I'm still sharing it, but it's very different. And I think that's something for me that is my goal in 2025, of really trying to pick up the phone and share more, because very similar to you, I felt pigeonholed into a box, into a mold. I had to be a certain way in this setting or be a certain way in that setting. And what I found throughout my life is very similar to what you were sharing as well, which is I was always more successful when I was myself. Yeah. And some people like it and some people hate it. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it to the best of your ability and you're not hurting someone else, what does it matter?
Exactly.
And so I think that chaoticness people are relating to, because they're like, oh, I wish I could show that on social media. Like, I love watching this because that's how my day is as well.
Yeah. And I think it's important to show the struggles and that not everything is okay. And I think the videos that I tend to stray away from watching even are where everything is so perfect and formulated and you know exactly what you're saying. I'm like, no, like, I'm late. I'm 2 minutes late. I'm still filming and get ready with me, because why not? Like, and there was also a time whenever I was playing football where, you know, I would talk a certain way. So I'd be like, oh, bro, what's up? Like, that's not me. That's not how I talk. And now I'm walking down the street doing this segment called Tipsy, saying like, oh, I like your dress, queen. You know, like stuff I would never say before, but that's what I'm actually thinking. And it's nice to be able to let that out and show people that you can do it. You can give people a random compliment.
What was the most surprising for you in the way people reacted to a video or a certain series of videos of yours?
I would say the biggest reaction, or the most unexpected, was to the Tipsy tea segment. I mean, I'm 19. I'm not tipsy in those videos. That's just my free flowing thoughts coming out, and people loved it. And people really just kind of, I think it was whenever I was the truest and the most authentic of everything I'm thinking, chaotic, running through the streets. Don't do it. But it was just kind of, people really, really resonated with that. And whenever you start doing something, I would do these one-offs. Like the first time I said, what's up, welcome to Tipsy Tea, I did it as a joke, kind of like, oh, this is going to be one thing, and then never again. And now it's like people are asking for it. So
I love that.
Yeah.
What was the scariest thing that you shared?
Probably my coming out video on YouTube was definitely the biggest thing for me to do. And the first time, the come out online was slow. I was in LA in August, and whenever I took off to leave, I posted a video, and it was like a vision board of how I see my future. And it was this like gay couple and their family kind of hidden on there, because I was like, okay, I'll subtly do it. And then the one that you talked about previously, the swiping one, that was kind of whenever I realized, no, I wanted to be more impactful. I want to do something more with this. It's great. I said it, but did I help anybody by saying it? And I think that's whenever I sat down and said, I want to film a long, raw YouTube video where I show all my emotions whenever I replay this life in my head and show people that there were struggles, but I made it out, and they will too.
As you shared your story and revealed more and more, was there a difference in people's reactions or relief on your side as you compare the different milestones of your coming out, from sort of teasing it to the full story?
Yeah, the teasing it was definitely a more, oh, we love you, Jake, just purely me finally getting it off my chest, but it still felt like I was holding it back a little bit, because even after posting that, I wouldn't say, like, whenever referring to my love life, I wouldn't say he, I would say they, just to kind of test the waters a little bit. But the YouTube video is really what my goal was, and I got countless people saying how it helped them and gave them the courage to come out or to see themselves coming out soon. And I think that was what I needed to make me feel like I officially came out.
When you talk about work ethic, what do you say to those who question being an influencer?
Like I said earlier, football was a vehicle to get me to my destination. I think social media is the same thing for me. It's not where I'm going to end up. It's not what I'm going to do my whole life, but it's going to help me find my passion and something that I can turn into my lifelong career, I guess, whatever that may be. But I think one time I was seeing this guy and he asked me, he goes, are you still doing that social media thing, or are you going to get a real job? And I'm thinking, you're in a consulting job that you hate at how old, with an Ivy League degree, and you're miserable every day. And I was like, I'd rather do this and be happy doing it, whether it's inconsistent, whether it's chaotic, than be stuck doing something that's routine but unfulfilling.
What do your parents think of social media?
They're
good sports. They participate.
They participate now. In the beginning, they were very on edge about it. They're like, okay, like, it's not serious, but have fun, and then they finally started to realize, and now they love it. I got my mom on TikTok. My dad's on TikTok. They're good sports about it now. So.
Well, I think that work ethic of yours, of really showing them this is something we can do. Yeah. In some ways, and kind of the other side of what we were talking about earlier, where they're giving you that full support and they're so focused on, this is something you're good at, let's continue to push. It is interesting that they went in with a little trepidation about TikTok. And then when they see your passion, your work ethic, and all of the skills that you bring to it, that's where they bring in their support. Yeah. And to your point earlier, it doesn't make the football aspect easier, but the love and support that they have for you to have success, whatever that means for you, I think is so important and so powerful. And also reflecting and understanding that the blind support isn't always helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they saw, like, okay, he has a work ethic and skills in many different areas. I think their biggest fear was just me letting that go to waste by throwing it away, not playing football or not doing something. And I think luckily by the time I ended football and kind of took the direction of social media more in that realm, they were like, okay, he's stable enough in that to be able to comfortably walk away.
As you were talking about that and sharing the work ethic and everything that you put out on social media, I had this gut instinct at first to ask you, what do you wish people knew about you that they wouldn't know from social media? And I love that. I mean, there may be something, and feel free to share, but I love that I stopped myself because I realized in what you were sharing earlier, that is the whole point of what you're doing. It's chaotic. You're running late. You're still filming a video. You're showing every aspect. You're talking to camera, honestly, sharing the good, the bad, and all of it. And there's something remarkable about that. Yeah. What do you think about when I bring that up? Because I feel like that's a very common question. Yeah. Like, what do you wish people knew about you that they don't?
No, exactly. I get it all the time. And I think the biggest thing that I wish people, I can come off very strong-minded and a little bit rude at times, I think. And I think that's what I'm trying to change going forward, is because that's not me, but I'm just moving very fast paced. And, you know, sometimes I'll say things and I don't mean it in like a negative way. It just comes off. And I think that's also just comes with the realm of social media, is nothing, you're delivering these messages, everybody's going to interpret them differently based on their own experiences, based on their own life and how they're feeling. But I think the biggest thing I'd say is like, I'm internally like a huge teddy bear. And people have kind of realized that and told me that, like, oh, you're much calmer and nicer. And I think I seem very outgoing on camera, but to your point earlier about how you're amazing on, you know, being on a camera and stuff, is if you put me in a room of 100 people and told me to talk, I would not say a word. I wouldn't be able to say a word. If you put a camera in front of my face and 100 people behind it, I would say everything. And I think that is kind of, I'm a very shy person, just one-on-one, but.
It is interesting because when we first spoke, I was surprised at how, we'll use a 2024 word, demure you were.
Yes.
Like very calm, cool, collected when we were talking, mindful. Yeah. And as you were describing it, I think that is definitely a skill set, to almost be able to bring this larger than life personality to camera, which is authentically you. Yeah. And also know it's a bigger caricature of yourself, that there are truths, but it also has shown you self-reflection and being able to look at it and say, oh, I realize that I might come off this way, or I'm moving too quickly and I say this. Yeah. Has that been something that you've talked about in therapy, that you've kind of seen this progression of understanding of yourself more through social media? Yeah,
I think it's allowed me to definitely see myself in a different light. And I've often seen myself of, oh, he can't talk in a, you know, be social in a room that well. I've always kind of been socially awkward, and I'll admit it because it's true, you know. But social media has taught me that whenever you go into certain things, like whenever I go into an event, I'm extremely uncomfortable. I'm, you know, peeing my pants being there. I'm nervous, but then it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it, because if you say like putting on a different face, it sounds fake, but it's not that. It's just kind of turning your brain off and just being your thoughts for a minute. And I think that's what social media has allowed me to do, is voice my inside opinions whenever I can't typically do that in the real world.
Yeah. I totally relate to that. For me, I look at it as, I love talking to people, and there could be 3,000 people watching this conversation, or I could do a sales training or coaching someone. That's what I love. Yeah. That's what I was good at. I think as a kid, I often felt like I was on stage and I had to perform or make people happy or distract from what was really going on. Yeah. And so I guess the way that comes through as an adult is that I feel more comfortable in this setting. Yeah. Whereas when I'm by myself, I don't want to sit with my own thoughts, because for so long they were so hurtful to myself, negative, upsetting, sad. And I didn't want to sit in those thoughts. I wanted to be out almost performing, because that's where I felt better. And so I can relate almost exactly to the opposite of what you're saying. Yeah. But I guess from the other side.
Yeah. I think there's also some relatability in that for me, is I think I go live a lot on, well, I have to go live on a spam account because I got banned on my regular, but I go live a lot, and a lot of times people will be like, live again, and it's because I don't want to sit in my own thoughts at times, and I'd rather just be talking to, whether there's one person on or 100. Yeah.
When you're in those moments and going on a live because you're having a tough moment or just want to distract yourself, do you talk about those things in the live, or do you try to distract yourself with other topics of conversation?
No, I try and distract myself, and then I just sometimes break down and start crying on camera. And I look back and I'm like, okay, that's so real, because I'm not going to just sit on there and smile and be like, oh, I'm great. Like, no, I'm not. That's why I'm on here, is so that you guys can help me and I can help you. And I think that's kind of taking that approach to it has really made it easier. And my therapist said I should journal instead of going live, but I think like going live is like my journal at times. So.
I can understand the therapist's concern for your safety, where people can be mean online. And I made a video the other day that was like, no one could say more hurtful things than I'm already saying to myself about myself. And I think that there is, I understand the concern, but I also love that journaling looks different than it did when there wasn't live, right? And I think there is something to journaling or sort of sitting with those thoughts and analyzing it, which obviously you're doing if you're in therapy, but also why not?
Yeah.
Like, why not go live and have those real conversations and not care and understand that people may not understand. And if they sit on your live, to me, they clearly relate to it in some way, because you don't stay on it. Even if you're giving hate comments, you're not going to stay there if you don't relate to it in some way, shape, or form.
If you don't want to be there.
Exactly.
You know you can scroll, so why aren't you? Is kind of what I always think. And I'm like, you're clearly here for a reason, whether you're projecting that you don't resonate with it, you do to some extent.
Yeah.
I think another part of it is I overshare tremendously, and I'm trying to work on it a little bit just for my own mental health. But I thought I was like a poet. So I started writing poems like every once in a while, and then I would just share them. And I was like, okay, so why not just tell everybody everything?
Yeah. Why not go live?
Why not go live? Like, you're going to write a poem to be alone and then share it. What's the point?
It is really interesting, because I think there are times where, I guess even now, like I have one account for me personally, and then I have one for podcast and personal coaching. And I feel more comfortable sharing on the podcast account because that content has and always will be focused on authenticity, and the podcast content and things that I've shared, videos of me crying, same thing on TikTok, even just the conversation that I have on that page versus my personal page. And there is something to that where, like, if your following is following you based on this person that is authentic, that shares these things, there is something nice you had mentioned before about the reciprocal, right? I think a lot of times you have all these people following you and you feel like they know a ton about you, and you're getting messages that your coming out video has helped them in this way, or this video has helped them in that way. And you're almost getting a little bit more of a relationship where, like, they can then support you a little bit in those moments where you want someone to talk to. And sometimes it's easier to talk on a live to strangers than it is to talk to family or friends, although they may jump on to your live.
No, I'll get screenshots being like, why are you on my For You page talking about this right now? But I think my favorite comments are when people say, is this FaceTime, or this feels like FaceTime? Because that's what I want it to be, is to feel like at the end of the day, if you don't have anybody to talk to, or if you're not comfortable talking to anybody about certain things, that you can jump on, even if you don't have a profile picture on your account, you can jump on and feel like you're on FaceTime with somebody.
Yeah. It is a community. And I think the way that you are utilizing it is really empowering to building more connection, because you want that reciprocal relationship, and that's how you're looking at it. And there's nothing wrong if it's not that way. But I think for me, especially after COVID, I feel like it's so disconnected. People not wanting to go to offices, people staying home, people not wanting to go out, not wanting to get coffee. It's like not wanting to go to the movie theater. Like, I personally, there's times where I'm like, oh, I'd rather just wait till it comes out and I'll watch it at home. And I'm like, no, you used to love going to the movie theater. Like, go. And every time I do it, I'm like, yes, I love going to the movie theater. Like, I like being out and being social. So I commend you for going on live in those difficult moments, because it's much easier to go on and show all the things that you got for Christmas than to show a moment where you're being vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree.
From everything that we talked about today, what message do you want to leave people with?
I want people to understand that life's too short to stay in something that you're unpassionate about or that's not fulfilling to you. And it's also never too late to pivot your life in the direction of it, because there's so many things to do, so many experiences to have, that why wish them away by doing something you're not happy about?
Definitely. And I love that that is true at every stage of life, because I think whether you do football for 8 years or you are in a marriage for 20, right? You can always reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
You can always find a new passion. The world is constantly changing, right? There's new things that come up every day.
Always. Yeah.
You'd mentioned something earlier with what your coach had said to you when you were letting him know that you were going to be, you weren't going to be playing football anymore. But I'm going to ask you a second one. What is something that someone told you that has impacted your life and you'll never forget?
It was this guy I was seeing, and he said to me, are you ever going to understand that your life's too chaotic and you need to settle down and do one thing? And I never really spoke to him after that, because I took away what I needed to from that of why would I, like, that's probably one of the things that upset me the most, but also showed me that not everybody's going to understand it. But if you understand that there's so much life to live, why are you going to stick to one thing?
Mm-hmm.
And my life's going to be chaotic till I die, and I'm going to love it, because why not?
I think there are a lot of times in theme with you sharing vulnerably on live and also in this moment, there's a lot of times that people will take this question and give something inspirational or something that helps them do something. And whenever I talk to someone about the podcast, I always actually share a very negative comment and what I learned from it. And I appreciate you sharing that one, because to me, that person so does not understand you, even from the limited amount of time that we've talked.
No.
It's like the exact opposite of what you want.
Yep.
And I think for me, it's hard to hear that, because for so long, when I was your age, I would have tried to fix it, and I would have tried to become the person that they wanted me to be if I liked them at all, because I was more afraid of being alone and not being loved. And if I fixed them, I could fix these other relationships in my life. And the fact that at a younger age, you are looking at it saying, no, I'm not dimming my light for anyone, is so powerful. And I am so excited for you to have that confidence at an age I did not have that confidence at.
Thank you.
Well, now is the time we get to flip the tables, and you get to ask me any question you'd like.
Is there something that you've learned throughout the course of doing this podcast that you wish you knew when you started, and that would have helped you make it easier?
Oh, that's a lot of things. I think when I first started, the first 4 episodes were my story, and it was scripted, and it was the only way I felt comfortable sharing it, because it wasn't on video. I didn't have to think free flowing in the moment. And that was a whole battle in itself. But that whole story is my story. And I must have rewritten each episode 8 times. The amount of effort I put into those first 4 episodes were an insane amount of work. And I think that when I look back at that, and then the first couple of interviews, I felt like I went from sharing so much but structured to trying to relate in the interviews. And I think what I realized was there's a place for both. And even today, just being able to share little tidbits where I relate to you, I think is important, because you're telling a story that's vulnerable and authentic. And for me in this moment, I want to double down on it, because I want other people to know it's not just you and it's not just them. There's now 3 of us that have had these experiences. And in some ways, I wish I didn't structure those first 4 episodes. I wish I just sat in front of a camera, even if it was for 8 hours, and just talked and told the story and worried about editing it later. But I was so concerned about making it perfect. And believe me, I cried in those episodes. Like there was a section that my mom actually said, I know what you're saying and you can hear it, but you can't put this out. Like you need to re-record it a little bit, because it's almost too much based on what you're trying to talk about. And she was right. Like my mom has been the best editor. But I think that is something that I strive to do more. And my hope is that doing it more on social media will allow me to feel more comfortable doing it on camera. But it took almost a year to be able to feel comfortable picking up a phone, staring into a camera, and just recording without the prompt of, oh, I saw this video, or responding to another video, or completely structuring it from start to finish, like in the notes app before I even started. And honestly, it's because I watched a ton of Justin Schumann, where he talks about like coaching people to do that and how it is a form of therapy. And it's the hate comment. I was in therapy and she asked me what I was afraid of. And I said, I don't know what I'm afraid of because no one could possibly be tearing me apart more than I already am myself. So like, there's nothing that anyone could say that I wouldn't have said to myself in a moment of beating myself up, which is something that I continue to work on. So fuck it. Like, why not?
Yeah.
And honestly, that made it so much easier. I just found a place. I sat on the floor, put the camera down. It wasn't a great angle, but there was great sunlight. And I was like, fuck it. Let's do it.
There it is. Amazing.
So I think that that is something that I wish I had known before, but I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation if I didn't go through a year of trying to figure that out. Anything that I didn't ask you that you want me to ask you and I can edit it in? No?
I think I'm good.
It's so interesting because when we were doing like the video call, like originally, like you were more quiet and I was like, oh, maybe like someone's in the other room or like something. And then today when you started, I was like, oh my God, no, you're definitely not as loud, but there were certain moments and I wish I could remember and I don't want to point it out because I don't want to make you nervous. There were certain things that you talked about that you drastically come alive for. Like your tone and volume changes so much. And it's not, you can hear it, you can hear the emotions, but like when I watch it back, I'll like make note of it. Like there were probably 3 or 4 moments where I was like, whatever you're talking about in that moment, like that's the stuff that like I want you to do every day. Cause you could hear and feel the excitement around those things. Yeah. And I like love that you brought it up today because I was thinking it and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Cause I knew that immediately. Yeah. And like to hear you say it, whereas like even your TikToks where you're just recording, it is like a character for you. It's the extreme version of who you are in like specific moments, but for whatever you're talking about on camera. That's it for today's episode of Turtz, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation. Do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe or follow button because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And if today's episode got you thinking, laughing, crying, or maybe even rolling your eyes, write a review and tap to rate. Now let's be real. This convo doesn't end here. Hit us up on socials and don't be shy. Slide into our DMs. We love to connect. Thanks for hanging with us today and catch you on the next one because our journey together is just getting started. Remember, stay curious, live authentically, and keep turtzing it up.